A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back to Video Games That Are Totally Awesome. So, for this instance, I've talked about two of the classic Turok games, and now some might wonder if I could talk about many of the other games like on the Game Boy Color or Advance or anything like that. Not even going to be talking about, let's say, the 2019 Xbox exclusive title, which was more of that crappy chibi style. No, what I'm instead going to be doing is talking about propaganda games as well as one of only two Touchstone games to have ever existed. Turok 2008. This reboot unfortunately had nothing to do with any of the other games, nor do we get the same old Turok that we remember from the original. But in all seriousness though, it's a reboot. It's meant to basically reutilize the franchise for a whole new generation of gamers. And being that this was pretty much in the middle of the era with the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, Nintendo Wii, this was basically a big point in history in which that the Generation 7 consoles were in full swing, and by 2008, they were practically at their peak. Turok, of course, was amongst many titles released during that year. 2008 had a lot of contenders out there. I mean, you had Legend of Spyro 3, you had Call of Duty World at War, and you, of course, gotta talk a bit about, let's say, Assassin's Creed, because at that time it was fresh off of its first success. But in any case though, Turok, in this instance, is very different, because let me tell you a bit about the production of this game. Because while I did say that the game itself was developed primarily by propaganda games, which have been known over the years for a few different titles over the years, well, let's just say that propaganda games was, get this, succeeded by Disney. Like, wow. Just wow. Oh, and you know what's even more crazy about this one? Is that the game itself was actually published by Disney? Like, what is this? This is something that I was actually told earlier before I even started recording this episode. Like, I don't even know what to say about this one. Like, it was one thing for me to have played this many times as a kid up until I turned 13 and started to move on towards the PlayStation 4, but the game was made by Disney? Oh man. I am beyond shocked. This is literally the most shocking moment for me in the history of this whole decade. Like, way more of a shocker than anything I've ever heard in my life. And I've been known for digging all sorts of insane things in my life, but this supersedes way more than the ordinary. It's top of the list, just no doubt about it. Turok, made by Disney and published by Disney. Like, I don't even know what to say. I really don't. It's as if Disney is really pushing for R-rated films, because this is an M-rated game after all. But let's just back up here for a bit, okay? A 2008 video game centers on a Native American with blood and gore in mind, violence and warfare and conflict, out to swear revenge against a man, in this instance, whom essentially took him away from a potential prison encampment, which would have landed him in prison, of course. But had it not been for this guy named Cain, Turok would have not become a powerful warrior that he would be years from that point on. Yet the game that centers on the story is put together by Disney. Yeah. Well, I've probably dwelled on that topic for a little too long there. So anyways, the story of this game, I just will never get over this idea. A Disney Turok collaboration. Well, at first, the story begins with what we discover to be a flashback scene. Because it depicts Turok as well as a group of soldiers going into a certain village and raiding it, capturing all the dwellers from inside. And turns out it's a dream sequence at the same time, because we see Turok himself in a sleeper pod along with other people. It turns out that he is now aligned with a certain military group called Whiskey Company. And unfortunately, he's not exactly welcomed into Whiskey Company with open arms. The other guys seem to treat him like crap. They make a lot of jokes about him, think that he's a janitor, and on top of that, there's one person whom especially has hatred for him because of a couple of personal businesses. Well, more on that later. Anyways though, Turok is eventually told to go into the main meeting room, in which that Cole, the man whom is in charge of Whiskey Company, he sets out a debriefing in which that 30 minutes to touchdown on a certain planet, in which that their target, Roland Kane, leader of Wolfpack, whom Turok was actually affiliated with prior to him joining Whiskey Company, is located. Kane apparently had gone AWOL and went to this planet, supposedly to get away. But Whiskey Company wasn't far behind, and once they tracked him down, they would basically find him and apprehend him in the name of justice. So, once Whiskey Company was all settled with that part, well, when Turok is first told about to the other guys, some people still laughed at him, and even this guy named Slade, whom, like I've said, he hates him for his own reasons. But again, this will become more apparent later on. Cole obviously doesn't want to hear none of it, so everybody else just leaves Turok alone. Thankfully though, one of the guys is able to escort him to the armory, in which that Turok is given a weapon, a submachine gun, in which that he had apparently only used once or twice. Alarms start to go off, and eventually a missile slams into the ship, causing it to fall out of control, break apart into multiple pieces, and scatter all over the planet. And Turok, well, not much is known on what had happened. But at the moment we get another flashback sequence. This shows him in handcuffs along with several other people, whom at the time were supposed to be escorted to prison, but then Kane, as we see, he apparently explains that, well, while the army or local prison officials might have different plans for them, well, he was able to convince them to just hand these people over to his command. And in doing so, he intends to turn them into members of Wolfpack. Turok, of course, stands up to him already with a certain sarcastic comment. Kane asks him to step forward. He suddenly knows that Turok is of Native American origin, and even though Turok continues to berate him with his own commentary, it turns out Turok is a lot more than Kane expected. One of the guards tries to knock him out, but he's able to dodge and then take him out with a simple head slam. Well, that's basically how Kane knows that he found some good fresh meat. But then Turok wakes up. He survived the wreck from up in the upper atmosphere. But even though while there were others on board, unfortunately the members of Whiskey Company would begin to dwindle. A few members that Turok would meet along the way while trying to get out of the ship would unfortunately be killed in various ways. One guy gets blown up, another guy gets crushed, And eventually there is another guy who goes out with Turok successfully, but unfortunately he doesn't make it very far. As Turok sees him getting dragged into the nearby bushes while trying to find a communication. And when Turok goes further, he finds more bodies along the way. And this is also where he gets a hold of various weapons, including his guns from before, as well as a knife, which takes him back to another point in history, in which that the knife had been used for unique stealth attacks. There is, of course, another flashback that we get to see about what the knife is meant for, and also exactly how effective it is in combat. But in any case, though, Turok eventually gets to see dinosaurs. Yep, dinosaurs. And there's also soldiers amongst the fields. It's unknown exactly where these soldiers are from and why they're there in the first place, but Slade, believe it or not, comes around. He takes out a person, and, well, the two basically now have to work together. You would think that Slade would be hard on Turok, just like how he was before, but somehow maybe the crash might have changed his mind or something. Well, whatever the case though, Turok and Slade are essentially stuck with each other, shooting everybody down along the way to try to regroup with the rest of Whiskey Company, or at least what's left of it. It's basically a while before we even come anywhere close to meeting up with other members of Whiskey Company, and from then on out, there's plenty that we end up doing here. There's lots of dinosaurs that are shot down, lots of things exchanged between Turok and Slade. And mind you that, Slade is voiced by the one and only Ron Perlman, so it really is an enticing backdrop to his overall character. And amongst that, like I've said before, he has a lot of issues with Turok. Well, we eventually get the explanation for it. Slade believes he's a traitor to Wolfpack, or anybody really, and that Turok unfortunately should not be trusted around anybody. Turok, of course, decides to speak up, pluck courage, and goes up to Slade to let him know that he would not understand what Turok had been through throughout the years, why he abandoned Wolfpack and then joined up with Whiskey Company. Slade, of course, interjects, lets him know that he had a brother named Robert Slade. There apparently was a mission at one point where Turok had unfortunately left him to die. And that's how you know. Slade has problems with Turok because his own brother got killed. And Turok is apparently the one to blame for it? But is that really the reason for it? Maybe Robert was involved in some sort of entanglement and Turok just didn't bother interfering with it. But amongst that, we still got a good amount of ways to go here. But no, never fear though. There's eventually a point in which that they travel through a cavern, get separated for a bit, and then waltz back outside to find a Dilophosaurus. And just a quick side note, the Dilophosaurus that they made is actually very accurate to the real life counterpart. It's a lot larger in size, and it also has the more prominent head crest on top. It's nothing at all like how the Jurassic Park Dilophosauruses were put together. So I'm more than glad that by paleontology standards they were able to make a lot of accuracies to various dinosaurs that they implemented in the game. So that way, any of us who play Turok 2008 will get to know there's not much to complain about in terms of dinosaur related accuracies and details. But of course, we know that apart from raptors and Dilophosaurus, there are still a lot of other dinos to worry about. But this is a topic for later on. They eventually meet up with Reese, a sniper. And well, you could say that Slade himself was pretty relieved upon seeing Reese for the first time since the crash happened. And the three, once again, they decide to embark on their quest to reunite with the rest of Whiskey Company. And, of course, large groups of soldiers start to infiltrate the areas nearby. We are led to another flashback in which that we not only get to see Turok with his knife, but there was also one about the bow and arrow. And so, when you think about it, there was a lot that has happened. I mean, you had Turok and Slade fighting through dinosaurs, fighting through soldiers, infiltrating an entire base, then encountering a broken highway, and eventually going through some caves, fighting a Dilophosaurus, evading a Rex, and many other things. But getting to meet up with Reese and then go through a large network of enemies to get ourselves pistols, submachine guns, bow and arrows, and eventually the pulse rifle. So, up until this point in the game, we have already found ourselves a good medley of weapons. There is also some grenades that we can find as well. But in terms of weapon selection, it gets bigger and better as the game goes even further. Because once we do clear out through this area with enemies of all sorts, we do in fact get to have much more time spent with the game's characters. Because once we finally do get to reunite with the rest of Whiskey Company, thankfully there's a good amount of people that are still alive. I mean, you have characters in there like Gonzalez, Foster, Shepard, Logan, and many others. So, we definitely don't have a shortage of characters in the game itself, even though the fact is that Cole had announced that they were low on resources, half of the Whiskey Company itself is MIA, and on top of that, Kane is still on the loose. They have no way of getting to him at this point in this current position. Because of the wreckage and because of a lot of things that have gone wrong, they unfortunately are going to be terminating their plan to go after Kane. Even Turok himself is surprised to see that they unfortunately are just flipping the lid completely. Cole then instructs Turok to go after a comm unit, and eventually, when Turok does settle out there, it gets somewhat later in the afternoon. But Cole has also told Turok that there was a member known as Cowboy, whom is out there just as well. And when Turok does find him and rescue him, we eventually are, get this, led to an arrow coming out of nowhere. It strikes Cowboy in his torso, and man, it was pretty horrible. Cowboy does unfortunately fall unconscious, and when a group of Whiskey Company do come in to save him, including Logan, Gonzalez Foster, Lewis, and Slade, Logan decides to formulate a plan not only to evac Cowboy and get him back to camp, but he also reestablishes the plan to go after the comm unit. So, Gonzalez, Turok, and Foster are now in charge of grabbing the comm unit. And the mission itself, let's just say, gets pretty horrifying. Because when the three do embark on their mission, there are a lot of things that end up getting in the way. There's a lot of soldiers out there, mainly ones with snipers. And unfortunately, Foster ends up getting caught in the crossfire, getting hit right square in the head with one single shot. And so, upon investigating this outpost in an effort to find the comm unit, Gonzalez and Turok had to fight their way through it. And when they do, they eventually encountered more resistance, even encountering more pieces of their ship. Eventually, though, after clearing these areas out of their enemies, they actually managed to find it. Gonzalez is able to grab it up on a ledge, but then, out of nowhere, a T-Rex pops up. It swallows up Gonzalez and subsequently takes the comm unit along with it. So, now Turok is the only one standing, and he not only has to grab that comm unit himself, but there's also the issue of that T-Rex. And even when he does get it, the T-Rex is back. And it turns into one big epic boss fight. And while we will admit, there's unfortunately no health bar here, which you can't exactly tell how the T-Rex is weakened or when it's going to die. But the thing is that you do at least have access to your weapons, and there's at least a good amount of ammo in this whole area as well. You can also find a few different weapons in here just as well. So this of course is only the first T-Rex boss fight that occurs here. And once you finally do get to a point in which you can get the T-Rex to fall down on the ground and then walk up to his head and then start slashing at him with a knife, the T-Rex unfortunately manages to throw you off into the distance, knocking you unconscious. But thankfully, he managed to live through it. Turok is able to wake up, and it's late at night this time though, as opposed to it being in the dusk setting. He apparently still has the comm unit with him, and now he needs to head back to base, the encampment in which that the rest of Whiskey Company is at. He also needs to let him know what happened to the two that were with him. So that's what he manages to do. So upon doing so, with encountering more dinosaurs, more soldiers, and a few other things here and there, finding some other weapons and materials to get a hold of, he eventually makes it back. And when he does, he gives them the devastating news that Gonzalez and Foster are unfortunately KIA, and he bared the witness to him. Everybody was pretty disappointed about it, but Slade was infuriated. Because apart from what happened to his brother back in the day, Gonzalez was actually his best friend in the whole team. Even more so than Shepard and Reese. So now, on top of blaming Turok for abandoning his brother, it's now Gonzalez whom gets killed because of him. And oh boy, this basically begins to upstart a big fight. But thankfully, the others were quick to dismiss him from doing so. But it ain't over yet. Cole gets shot with an arrow just like Cowboy did, and then a fight breaks out. Turns out these soldiers that Kane was working with, they're apparently aware of this campsite. They attack the group and even bring in their own spider tank. But hey, at least we get to find ourselves a chain gun and a rocket launcher. So we get some pretty powerful weapons in this whole segment of the story. Unfortunately, even when we do manage to beat this team and the spider tank, 3 personnel end up killed. Cole, Lewis, Henderson, they unfortunately end up KIA. The comm unit unfortunately is badly damaged as well. So they are now officially, as Logan himself says, sitting ducks. These soldiers have their position, and they need to find their way out of this planet before they get to them. So they make a plan to start moving tomorrow morning, as unfortunately it is getting pretty late. But then some noise as well as some light show up in the distance. Logan decides to send out Slade and Turok, and eventually another guy known as Carter, to investigate this whole thing. However, this is yet another pretty big part of the story that we have yet to truly identify with. When Turok, Slade, and Carter do make it to this location, however, the noise and lights basically alludes to them that there was some sort of base that was sitting nearby. And upon infiltrating it, they actually discover a number of things. A few possible saving graces that have basically been in the area for some time. There apparently is some sort of semi-abandoned hangar with ships inside that they could actually use to escape the planet. One thing about the planet itself is that it was being terraformed by MG, the army itself that Kane has been using on this planet for some time. It turns out that in the years that since he went AWOL, he had used this planet for terraforming, for research, and for formulating his own army. Because since Wolfpack practically broke down, he had basically been on the run went to this planet to rebuild his collapsed empire. But since Whiskey Company was hot on his trail, he had no choice but to bust out the big guns almost immediately. And the dinosaurs, believe it or not, were basically a genetic modification. Something that he had done with years of his research alongside MG. But amongst all that stuff, the planet itself is just a big dead zone for all kinds of trouble. Not just with the dinosaurs or the army, Kane himself, but for other things as well. Because even though Turok lets Logan know about the hangar, a big surprise was awaiting for the three. Carter discovers that there's things coming from out of the ground. Turns out, giant scorpions are there. There was actually a video in which that it talked a bit about something relating to bugs. Yeah. So on top of Kane being a man responsible for formulating his own army, terraforming a planet, and also creating dinosaurs to roam on the planet, he's now got giant bugs, scorpions for the most part. And man, there's a ton of them. Even though they're not that hard to take down when you have the right weapons, they had to find a way out of there, you know. It was one thing for Carter to be broken down with the bugs, but now you got Slade and Turok trying to fight their way out of there with lots of these guys chasing after them. Thankfully, a chopper is out there, but unfortunately the main pathway ends up blocked with some obstructions. They do, however, find an alternate route about there, but even from that point on, the ground ends up collapsing. And the two eventually just fall into a cavern, and once again end up unconscious. We're once again treated with more lore in backstory, where Turok basically learns of the intentions of Wolfpack. Kane is there, ready to let Turok know that no prisoners, witnesses, or innocents were technically in this town that they infiltrated and raided. But even with this child that Turok was holding in his arms, Kane still had the guts to shoot her. That's seemingly the whole point in Turok's life, in which that no wonder why he left Wolfpack, to try and find solace with a better life and with some hopefully better people. So I guess you could say from that point on, Turok has been doing a lot better, but he still unfortunately had to tackle with his former mentor and the other people that he has known over the years. There's actually other members of Wolfpack that Turok had encountered with, including a man known by the name of Grimes. I'll talk a bit more about him later on as well. Anyways though, now we have a cavern to deal with. A large set of caverns. This is even more than what the last time had happened, you know? Where they fought raptors in the last one. This time we got bugs coming after you in these caves. But hey, at least you managed to grab the flamethrower that Slade left behind. I mean, Shepard tossed it over to him. And not only was this flamethrower capable of spewing flames, it also had a napalm grenade launcher equipped to it. So, talk about being well prepared. It basically refuels by adding canisters to its fuel tank. So, that's pretty awesome. And the flamethrower is a pretty effective weapon against the bugs too. It actually scares them off, if not only damaging them. So, I guess you could say these giant scorpions are afraid of fire. Anyways though, even with these new weapons and even with these new things in mind, there's still the added challenge of finding your way out of there. These caverns are way longer and a lot more complex than the last ones were when we got separated from Slade earlier in the game. Turok had to find his own way out, fight more dinosaurs, and eventually encounter a Dilophosaurus once he finally got out of there. And reunited with Slade as well, but the point is that these caves are even more complex. But hey, at least we actually get treated to a boss battle. Yeah, turns out that there was a pretty large cave with a small lake in the center, and Slade lets him know he needs to be quiet. The reason? There's a freaking sea monster in there. holy crap. I mean, when I first saw this, it scared me. It was like, this was a little while before Five Nights at Freddy's, mind you that, where jump scares were probably at their peak. But the thing is, a jump scare with this freaking Leviathan looking thing, it's unbelievable. Was this also a creation of Cain? I don't really know. I haven't really read a lot about the lore about this game here, especially since this game came out, and I've played it many times over. But here's the thing though. This, like the other boss fights, is also a bit hard here. I will say that with the T-Rex, you have a lot of space around here to roam with here, but with this sea monster thing, it eventually just lunges down at you trying to gobble you up. However, there is actually a way to defeat it. There are small pockets of gas that eventually light up. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to aim the flamethrower at them, and as soon as it swoops its head down towards you, right over one of these pockets that's lit up, it blows up when you fire at it. Yep. Set fire to those gas pockets. They'll explode and damage the monster. And do it enough times, you could even use the napalm launcher, and it'll do the same sort of thing. Like the other boss battle though with the T-Rex, there's no health bar on this guy. You just gotta hit him enough times until the game basically lets you know that you defeated it. It'll fall over and, well, Slade's flamethrower gets handed back, but then we find another one not too far away. So, from that point on, we do get to make our way through with Slade by our sides. And with both of us having flamethrowers, napalm launchers, and etc. now, it is quite a treat. We are barbecuing the crap out of scorpions. But hey, we eventually do find a way out. We get in contact with Logan, Turok and Slade make their way out of the cave and into daylight, in which that, after some more encounters with the MG soldiers, they thankfully find Logan firing an RPG at one of the helicopters, and well, when they do finally get back together, they discuss on what happened. Carter died, the hangar is of course in a certain direction, the whole group of survivors make their way over there. There unfortunately is 7 people out there right now. You have Turok, Slade, Shepard, Logan, Jericho, Reese, and then, of course, we gotta talk a bit about the last guy here. I mean, it's one thing where we have Turok, Slade, Shepard, Reese, Jericho, Logan, and then, of course, we could talk a bit about Cowboy. But the thing is that with Cowboy, it's nice that he actually managed to recover from his wounds here. But the fact that he's on the run now, after like only a day of recovery, one thing's for certain though. He's right back up and running in only like a day worth. An arrow in his gut and he's up and running. Like, I don't even know. How does that work? Anyways though, 7 members of Whiskey Company remaining. They encounter more resistance. Logan comes to the conclusion that Turok, according to Slade, was actually a traitor to Wolfpack and Cain himself. So, even though he basically backed up Turok this whole time, now he's thinking like Slade did. And besides, hasn't Slade basically turned around and started thinking that Turok would actually be of help to them? That's just strange. Anyways though, they decide to find cover, hiding away from the soldiers. Logan gets a bit too loud though, and they start another fight. With more soldiers, as well as more choppers and other equipment coming towards them, expect a lot of resistance in this part. But fear not, because Logan offs himself. He stands directly in the line of fire of the helicopter's machine gun, drops his RPG, and well, you of course get to pick up the RPG and shoot down the chopper with it. But then of course, we could talk a bit about the fact that with Jericho in line, well, you have him operating his own minigun. And while 3 members are still remaining in one group, with the rest going in their own path. The thing is that they eventually find their way to the insides of the base itself that they're heading to with the hangar. Jericho vows to stay outside and defend them while they make their way deep inside. And well, we end up losing Jericho as well. So Logan and Jericho are out, leaving only 5 people remaining. I really am a big fan of this whole survival cliche. It starts off with a lot of characters and then wiggles down to only a few left. With 5 people remaining, what else could happen here? Well, after some more time fighting with the soldiers, the 5 eventually reunite together. I mean, you have the group of 3 waiting for them, with Shepard, Slade, and Reese out there, alongside Cowboy and Turok, to go make their way out to their final destination. Well, it unfortunately doesn't quite get much better here, because what happens is that this hangar was unfortunately sabotaged. The ships are destroyed. Shepard can't believe what's happening. Dinosaurs show up again, but once they make their way to the nearby control room, another video is played. Kane has apparently done more research. So, on top of being the man whom has manifested in the creation of dinosaurs on a terraformed planet where he has his own private army, now there's not only bugs we have to worry about, but there's apparently a gas derived from the toxins inside the bugs' bloodstreams. So, it seems that the further we go into this game, we encounter so much more problems from Kane himself. And, well, we can agree on Shepard at least. That dude's got some serious issues. Wow. Like, what else is he capable of doing here? Is he going to create a planet-destroying bomb of some sorts and blow up the planet with himself in it? If he was backed up in a corner or something? It's kind of like something Dead Rising would have done. Anyways, though, they make their way out of the building itself and onto the base where, get this, volcanoes are erupting now. Lava is starting to form, meteorites are crashing down from the volcanic surfaces, and dinosaurs are still roaming around, lots of them as well. You got a lot of Dilophosaurs and raptors for the most part here, but while we do once again have a separation intact, we do have Shepard and Turok going at it together instead of Cowboy and Turok like before, when Jericho stayed behind. In any case, though, they eventually make their way over to an outpost where they got to open a gate, but they at least have turrets they can take a hold of. Because now there's flying bugs. Yeah, that's incredible. On top of the scorpions, now we got giant locust-looking things that actually spit out slime. So, acidic slime, mind you that. Talk about the enemies getting worse as time goes on, and the planet is itself going to hell. Like worse than Jurassic Park. Worse than the KT event at this point. Because this is more of a man-made problem than nature or the cosmos doing anything with it. But, thankfully, Turok and Shepard are able to make their way through and reunite with the likes of Reese, Slade, and Cowboy. Reese is able to scope out the situation, but, surprise, surprise, he gets killed. So, just like that, another man is down. Yeah, 3 people have now gotten hit with arrows. 2 died, 1 injured. So talk about things only getting worse from here on out. Because the T-Rex also comes back. Thankfully, it gets distracted by the nearby MG soldiers that are out there in front of that base. Whiskey Company is now down to only 4 men. And this base is essentially the last leg of their journey. Because in addition to heading inside to attempt to find Kane as well as another ship, they also make plans to blow up the system. Yes, by arming explosives into the base, they're not only able to cripple MG, but they also intend on preventing that gas from getting off the planet. So it's another big attempt to thwart Kane's plans. And while some might think it's a suicide mission, Turok is more than determined to get it done. These new folks that he's met, he's come to care about. And he's believed that they've done far better than any member of Wolfpack he had ever seen. Even Slade's brother, I'm sure he must have had some sort of feeling for him. And the intentions that Robert might have had compared to the Slade that he knows now. In any case though, while the other three await inside the main waiting room, Turok is able to go into the system, arm 3 bombs, bring along the chain gun, utilize it as a turret, while a number of flying insects go into the room just as well. I will say that this is a pretty challenging aspect here, because in addition to the autosave happening right before you enter the room, it's a pretty lengthy journey here. You gotta venture towards 3 different pods in which that the gas is stored at, so that way you can have it all destroyed. And these 3 explosives, of course, are timed, but it doesn't really give you a timer as in how long you have left to escape. But in any case though, after getting those 3 explosives put in, Turok is able to get out of the room, but unfortunately, MG is able to breach into the other room that the 3 are waiting in, and unfortunately are overrun. Turok encounters a flashbang, is captured by Kane, Grimes, as well as some MG officials. The group basically are held hostage at this point, at gunpoint, and they don't really know what to do here. Of course, Kane goes so far to convince Turok that he apparently can't abandon his mission without getting everybody killed first. Cowboy interjects, but only gets shot. So he survived an arrow to the gut, but not a bullet? Ask me if that makes any sense. Anyways, though, the explosives go off soon after, catching Kane off guard, killing Grimes, whom, you remember whom shot the arrow at Cowboy? Well, turns out Grimes was the man behind it. He also fired arrows at Cole and Reese, the only deaths he basically caused with the bow and arrow. Turok, Slade, and Shepard now, without Cowboy, are the only survivors we have now. They not only have to escape this fallen base, which was destroyed because of the explosives, but there was also a variety of other traps and hazards set upon. Dinosaurs were beginning to overrun the base, there were pits of lava forming, lots of platforms collapsing. A number of the soldiers are also falling prey to these hazards. I guess you could say that this is technically the true ending for MG here, because Whiskey Company had destroyed that gas. But at the end of it all, there is a saving grace. Behind a door that the 3 go through, a ship is standing out there in the bay. So they finally manage to find their way out. Since Shepard is a pilot, he is able to easily operate the ship. Turok, unfortunately, declines to go at first. Even Slade encourages him to go after Kane, which he does. But when Turok is able to successfully take down Kane's ship, the 2 have a bit of one-on-one, discussing each other's problems, insecurities, and of course, Turok's ultimate disagreement that led to him abandoning Wolfpack and joining up with Whiskey Company. But of course, it all came down to a knife fight. Turok's knife unfortunately ends up going missing, so Kane goes after him. But with a bit of luck, as well as a lot of button mashing, it's a bit of a win for Turok. He's able to shove the knife into Kane, ending him once and for all. This former mentor of his the man who basically forged the warrior out of Turok, is now gone. Probably for the best, considering what he's done to this planet. However, it's still not over yet. The T-Rex comes back too. So, you could consider this to be like a double boss fight. The first one is sort of anticlimactic, conventional in a way, but with the T-Rex, it's even lengthier. And once again, we don't really get a health bar or anything to let us know how much more life the Rex has. In any case though, there are a lot of weapons you can use here, even sticky grenades. So, this whole area that the T-Rex is occupying now has every weapon you can use. There's the pistol, the submachine guns, the sniper rifles, the pulse rifles, the shotguns, the RPGs, chain guns, and pretty much every other weapon that you find all throughout the game. But of course, the T-Rex once again falls. Turok uses his knife and eventually plants a grenade into his eye, blowing the T-Rex up to Kingdom Come. And that is basically what we know. Turok is not just any warrior. The fact that he straight up kills a T-Rex by slashing its eye out and then blowing it up with a grenade, that is definitely Turok for you. Shepard and Slade come back for him, and then we have ourselves the ending. They fly out to space on a long ride back to Earth. They're advised to get comfortable by Shepard himself. And from then on out, space is in the background as the credits roll, in which that we not only get the cast, like I said, you got Ron Perlman voicing Slade, but there's a variety of other actors whom are also responsible for the other characters. And apart from everything else, that's Turok 2008. Pretty much the last time that we ever got a game in the mainstream series. But that's not to say that there weren't any more Turok games that have come out since then. A few of which were morely on mobile devices as well as some more indie-based platforms. There were hardly any of which that had been made based on larger companies and larger platforms such as modern consoles. However, there were talks about a supposed sequel for this game because Turok 2008 did get itself some success back then. However, because Touchstone unfortunately didn't quite go out too well along with the developer itself. So, both companies were more or less short-lived, and unfortunately would file for bankruptcy sometime after this game's release. So, talks of a sequel might have come around in the years following, but there never was one made. And considering the ending that this game gave us, it is more appropriate that it's better left off that way, rather than try to pick up from where it left off, where the guys arrive on Earth and are possibly met with more problems. I mean, there's not much more you can do after this point. But then of course, like I've said, some more games came, some went. But then of course, there was Turok Origins, which is about to be released at some point. While we have yet to have a confirmed slated release, you know I'm going to be more than just a simple sucker for a game like this. And it's been a long time since we played a Turok game. In 2012, that might have been the last time I played Turok 2008. But nonetheless, I'm more than excited for another Turok installment. Considering how popular it was amongst the PlayStation platform, of course PS5 is going to be the spot for where this next Turok installment will come in, and I'll be playing on it. Who knows? Maybe I'll have a first impressions video made of this as well. I guess only time will tell from then on out. Anyways though, with all that, I seriously just will never get over the fact that this was a Disney game. Disney Interactive made Turok. It might as well be like, I don't know, DreamWorks creating a Friday the 13th game? Who knows? Anyways though, that's all I got to talk about with this. I've had a lot to say about Turok 2008, but don't worry, because throughout the next week I do have plans for many other things that have to do with video games. Hopefully ones that are much more awesome, because this one I really enjoyed it over the years, but I can't say that it's all too great for what it is. In any case, though, I probably will have more dinosaur-related games out there. Maybe I could talk about Jurassic the Hunted again, but again, we have yet to find out how that works. Anyways, though, if you want to see more, go down to my channel to make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side.